What's up, Chuckers? Producer Mike here. This is the Serve 5 Setter, your weekly roundup of all things racket sports. 5 stories in 10 minutes or less. But before we get into it, please hit subscribe on YouTube. Give us a follow on your favorite podcast platform so you can stay up to date on all things served. We really appreciate the love and support. That said, today is July 24th, 2026, and here is what we've got for you. Novak's comments on retiring, the WTA's new protocol, Cincinnati is stacked, and DC is open for biz. But first, news broke this week that the French Open has become the first Grand Slam to offer players a share of tournament revenue, the exact model the players have been fighting for in one form or another for years. Recent months have seen a coordinated push from the top players to pressure the 4 slams on a list of demands, with revenue sharing at the top of it. I hopped on earlier with John Wertheim and asked him what's going on with this announcement and what the players have ultimately been after with all of this.
They want a percentage of gross revenue. So when tournaments increase in scale, the players will see in that upside. The tournaments have been pretty good about the wage increases. Wimbledon, 20% year over year raise in the prize money. US Open is supposed to do something similar, which will put them over $100 million. As far as consultation and how tournaments are run, tournaments are all for that. We'd love to have player input, whether it's tennis balls or whether it's roof policy. We'd love player input. We would do that tomorrow. A little more grudgingly, but I think they're going to do it. The tournaments, I think the US Open will probably be the first, will make contributions to pension plans, no problem. The big sticking point, though, is percentage of gross revenue and having some sort of tie-in. Wimbledon was very adamant. It makes no sense was how it was termed. Someone at the All England Club told me even more directly, listen, we've been running this tournament pretty well for more than 100 years. We're not going to change our business model because a couple of top players are upset. And it looks like the U.S. Open is sort of a non-starter there as well. The interesting news this week, though, is that the French Federation that runs the French Open, Roland Garros, they actually put out a proposal that did have a way that players could have some revenue sharing. And that puts pressure on these other events. One thing to know about this, Mike, is that these events, because of collusion, they can't confer with each other, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it would make sense for everyone to sit in a room. That is not happening. Not only that, these events really can't even communicate with each other. So these are 4 separate negotiations that Larry Scott, who's representing the players, is having with each of the 4 majors. And it's interesting that Roland Garros, which kind of got things rolling, when you'll recall, they did have a prize money increase, but it actually was a lower percent of revenue year over year. That was a huge misread of the room. That was a big problem. In a lot of ways, that was what sort of amplified all of these negotiations and media protests, and sort of that raised the temperature. So it is a bit ironic that now the French Federation has made this concession on revenue. But I was told by someone who has seen broad strokes of the agreement, I was made privy to those, it's not quite, I don't want to say Trojan horse, our Odyssey theme this summer. I don't know if it was quite that, but I don't think this is quite the bonanza that it appears on paper.
What is the basis of what you saw, and how is it a little bit of a Trojan horse in comparison to just a straight fixed model deal and or a gross revenue deal?
It is all about the accounting, and it is all about how these balance sheets are going to be laid out and what counts and what doesn't. And, you know, we talk about profit versus revenue, but even revenue, two people can read the same balance sheet very differently. So are things like the marketing budget and capital improvements and all sorts of the other expenses that tournaments have, does that count as revenue? It's interesting to note. I think, honestly, I think a motivation, what's galvanized a lot of this is the Wimbledon expansion, which in theory could realistically make Wimbledon, a $1 billion plus annual event. And when Wimbledon expands to the other side of the street and converts the golf course, its finances change dramatically. The U.S. Open, as anyone who's tried to buy tickets in 2026 knows, some of these the capital improvements as they were built are really about having much more expensive club seating. Roland Garros, I'm not sure, has that financial upside. But again, they made a bold step with this proposal. Remember, Roland Garros essentially met with this group of Larry Scott during the French Open. They met with him after. They said, listen, give us some time. We'll come back with a counter proposal. To their credit, they did. And to their credit, their counter proposal did have this revenue sharing model. But I was told sort of be careful what you wish for, because this is not as simple as, hey, listen, we made $400 million and you want 8% of that, here's $32 million.
That was just a few minutes of a longer conversation with JW, one that also got into the potential of a player boycott of the US Open's mixed doubles event, which was such a success last year. To hear the full conversation, hit the link in the description and sign up for the newsletter. Now on to set number 2, where the GOAT continues to hint at something we've been expecting for some time. We all saw Novak Djokovic popping up at Fanatics Fest in New York this past weekend, hitting punching bags, draining three-pointers, and crawling out in a luchador-style mask. But one thing that went slightly under the radar was this moment.
The moment is approaching, no question, it's closer than ever, but Andre Agassi is one of the all-time greats, of course, and it was part of my, give it up for Andre.
Yes.
And he said in the doc, he said, I don't know when the end is coming for Novak, but I'm sure as hell that when it comes fast. So I think he's right.
Hard to square, quote, closer than ever with the results, though. This is a guy still inside the top 10 who has reached the Australian Open final and the Wimbledon semifinals this year while playing only a handful of events. Novak has also said publicly that he wants to play the LA 28 Olympics, carrying the flag of Serbia. So if that holds true and his body holds up, we've got at least 2 more summers with the GOAT. Set number 3 brings us to an announcement for the WTA this week that they would be mandating gene testing for every player on tour. The policy introduces a one-time test in the form of a cheek swab, blood, or saliva sample. The test screens for the SRY gene, a marker on the Y chromosome tied to male sex development. Positive result means a player can't compete on the women's tour unless they can demonstrate a specific condition to WTA medical staff. This replaces the tour's previous rules, which allowed transgender women to compete under certain testosterone thresholds. This is not a first in women's sports. Last year, World Boxing and World Athletics announced a similar protocol, and then earlier this year, the International Olympic Committee enacted similar SRY testing requirements. Set number 4 takes us to my hometown in Ohio, where the Cincinnati Open just dropped an entry list that has tennis fans pumped. Sean talked last week about Carlos Alcaraz and Holger Rune being on the entry list leading up to the event. But if you take a closer look, every top 10 player from both tours are also currently featured. And if that doesn't make the draw sound competitive enough, there are 10 former champions scheduled to play. Iga Swiatek, Aryna Sabalenka, Coco Gauff, Maddie Keys, Karolina Pliskova, Carlos Alcaraz, Jannik Sinner, Novak Djokovic, Alexander Zverev, and Daniil Medvedev. On the men's side, this will be the first event since Indian Wells where all of the current top 10 players are in the draw if the entry list holds firm. This has the making for a heck of a tune-up before the US Open. And finally, set number 5 kicks off the only combined ATP and WTA 500 level event of the season, the DC Open. Played at the Fitzgerald Tennis Center in Rock Creek Park, the main draw starts Monday, July 27th, and runs through August 2nd. On the men's side, defending champ and newly wifed up Alex de Minaur is back alongside of America's best, Ben Shelton, Taylor Fritz, Frances Tiafoe, and also newly hitched Tommy Paul. On the women's side, it is also stacked. Jessica Pegula, Alina Svitolina, Naomi Osaka, Maddie Keys, plus defending champ Leylah Fernandez. And oh yeah, 7-time slam champ Venus Williams is playing doubles with Alex Ayala. As for how to watch, it is on Tennis Channel here in the States and streaming through the Tennis Channel app. Check out your local listings for the day sessions because with that field, the early rounds are going to be sneaky good. All right, my friends, and that leads us to our tie-break trivia. I'm breaking the rules this week a little bit, guys. The question will have nothing to do with the previous stories because our very own Andy Roddick is a movie star in a pickleball movie called The Dink, which premieres today, Friday, July 24th on Apple TV. But this is not Andy's first time playing himself on screen. So here's our question. Which famous early 2000s teen sitcom cast Andy Roddick as a guest star playing himself? Hint, there's a cat involved. We'll have that answer for you in this week's 5-Setter newsletter, along with a few stories that didn't quite make the cut, including Tennis.com's literally stopping of the presses, Ben Shelton's pressing pause on his YouTube series, and more on the ATP doubles drama. For the full breakdown, head to servepodcast.com or find us on Substack. Please hit subscribe on YouTube or follow us on your favorite podcast platform. And Techie Sean will be back with you guys next week, which I see in the comments most of you would prefer. See you chuckers next week.